Okay, this is negative speech number 1, responding to the first affirmative speech. Thank you, Scientific Discussion, for your contribution. My value for the resolution resolved, Ayn Rand is an insignificant philosopher. My value will be progress. So I'm valuing progress from earlier stages of civilization to more advanced stages of civilization. That's a really easy definition, so we don't need to get hung up on it. And my criteria for saying when we have progress, my criteria is rationality, specifically rationality in philosophy, since that's the subject of the resolution. So I'm going to uphold the view that rationality leads to progress. Now, my first point parallels closely my opponent's first point. He holds his value as immortality, which Ayn Rand wrote books, so she'll be immortal, and I can't argue against that. But he holds his criteria as inclusion. Inclusion among other philosophers. Inclusion, for example, in a compendium that lists her as an authority. Peer review, right? Peer review journals and so forth. So my first point about Ayn Rand is the fact that she's basically been excluded from academia generally. Now, I have a few names for you, and I've got a book I want to show you. This is Aristarchus of Samos, the Ancient Copernicus. The book is by Sir Thomas Heath, and this is about this guy about the year 450 BC, before Christ. 450 years before Christ, this geometer, he was a geometer, he discovered the fact that the earth is moving. Not only is it moving, but it's going around on its axis and revolving around the sun. So he discovered the two motions, he discovered they lived on the globe, and he had some idea of the size. He actually believed that the sun was a little bit smaller than the whole of Greece. So he's way, way off there. But he had some idea of it, and he knew the earth was moving. You got that? That's almost 2,000 years before Christ. Where was Aristarchus in the peer-reviewed journals for that 2,000 years? Now, this other guy, later on, Copernicus, I have here a book called The World of Copernicus, and the original title was Sun, Stand Thou Still. Copernicus discovered this, or rediscovered it actually, and in the first versions of his books that were printed in Europe, he actually cites Aristarchus of Samos as his authority, his source for the theory that the sun is at the center of the solar system, because he didn't want to get into much hot water with the church. But he was an educated man. He studied ancient Greece and ancient Rome, and he was aware of Aristarchus. So where was Aristarchus in the peer-reviewed journals? And then, get this, Copernicus disappears. 100 years later, actually I think it was like 65 years later, Galileo's going through some papers in the university and discovers Copernicus's theories. Galileo, as you know, later in his life, was put under house arrest and condemned, and he actually died under house arrest. He lived the rest of his life without freedom because he was teaching the sun was at the center of the solar system. Where were Copernicus, where were Galileo in the peer-reviewed journals, or in society's approval? So you see the question I'm getting at. Why does society have to approve of them for them to be right? We could also note Adam Smith, right? In 1776 he pens this fantastic book called The Wealth of Nations that explains that government control harms the economy. Then we go through the 1800s and the 1900s, and we see the birth of Marxism and communism and total state control. And at the end of the 1900s, we get guys like Ronald Reagan standing up and saying, wait a minute, government control is bad for the economy. Surprise! Adam Smith knew it 200 years ago. So you don't have to be approved of by your neighbors and friends to be correct about something. Now, my second point would be coherence. This is something I hear about Ayn Rand all the time. She's not original at all. Everything she said came from somebody else, somewhere else, some other time. She upholds logic, which comes from Aristotle. She upholds free economics, which comes from Adam Smith. She upholds egoism, which comes from Schopenhauer and Nietzsche. You know, and they go on, their list goes on, and some of them are crazy. Some of them think that she gets her stuff from Marx or Kant. So the fact is, you can point out a lot of similarities in other philosophies with her system, but only her system has them all together in a coherent framework deduced from reality, from objective facts of reality, perceivable by man's five senses. Anything she says can be reduced to the five senses. So we have here, let's run over it real quick, my opponent's value of immortality versus my value of progress. Now, I think that we have to view Ayn Rand as a significant author, because progress isn't going to occur if we keep on dissing on and ignoring people such as Aristarchus, Copernicus, Galileo, Newton, and Adam Smith, and Ayn Rand. So, my criteria being rationality, my value being progress, I've shown that the exclusion of Ayn Rand in history is not important, and I've shown that very, very many people in history that are very important were totally excluded by their peers for centuries on end sometimes before they were finally discovered. Ayn Rand will have her day.